Hello everybody, welcome back again. I'm Avim, and in today's episode, I'm going to talk about a policy, that can make or break your plans. So be it if you are a first-time buyer, investor, or an upgrader. And you are right, we're going to talk about this topic called the cooling measures. So let's break down what they mean for you and how to navigate them wisely. So if you have seen into one of my essential presentation, I did mention there are always a telltale signs before every cooling measures. So now the key thing to ask ourselves is this: why is there a need for cooling measures? Well, number one is to ensure affordability and to ensure that income increment is aligned with the housing pricing. And number two is to maintain the price efficiency, which is our government's vision and long-term approach in Singapore real estate market. And the number three is cooling measures act like a first line of defense to sustainable growth by buffering market from external market forces such as the COVID-19, high interest rates, financial crisis, so on and so forth. Right, so as you can see from here, this is the last 14 to 15 rounds of cooling measures over the past 15 years. Of course, I'm not going to go through everything here because it can be quite technical, right? But the key thing to observe is this: every time when prices spike up too much, cooling measures are introduced. And whenever prices drop too much, cooling measures are taken off to allow prices to recover. And this is how the government do so to ensure that the price remains sustainable. So remember earlier, I was saying there's always a telltale sign before every cooling measures. And this indicator will naturally point us to this keyword. And what this keyword all about is called oversupply. So if you look at year 2024 first half and second half, there are still some lands that are still unsold. Furthermore, in 2025 first half, there were a total of 9 plots of land that were released. As you can see from this newspaper article, you can realize that the article mentioned in the private residential market, home prices rose by a 3% in 2024, a slower pace compared to year 2023. Alright, so, and this is why I usually share with my friends and clients that they should always buy and wait for the next cooling measures. But do you know why? Alright, because it simply means the prices have already picked up to the next higher point. So with that in mind, we will naturally have two types of buyer in the market. The first one is the one who catches before the peak, and the second one will be the one who has to pay more for the peak. And given the choice today, which type of buyer do you want to be? And if you're watching this right now, this is what we want to do for you. And it's to actually help you catch this uprise that is happening anytime at this moment. And later, if you study closely at the graphs over the past few historical quarters with me, you'll be able to identify a renewed opportunity that's been presented, and what it means to you is to provide you a better profit margin when the rest of the market is fearful. And tying in together with our other 4 essential push factors, it will give your property capital a very positive increment year after year. So the question now comes to, will there be new cooling measures? So to me, looking at the stats, I feel that the cooling measures will still take a little bit of time before it is implemented. And why do I say that? Because if you recall what I mentioned earlier, the supply factors needs to be influential enough to cause this effect. As long as there isn't enough supply or an undersupply in the market, no matter how many cooling measures you implement, the prices will still continue to go up. Like what we always say, the oversupply must happen first. But if the lands are not even sold, how can they even be launched in the market and allow the supply to come back into the market? Hence, at this point of time, as I speak, I feel that there will be some lead time before cooling measures are introduced into the market, because we need to wait for the supply from the lands to come back and be launched into the market to replenish this supply. Alright, so next we come to this recurring issue, which is what I like to call it the cooling measure trap. And I've seen many people fall into this misconception, thinking that cooling measures will actually drop prices. So whenever there's a cooling measures, people will say it is not safe to enter, should wait and see if the prices will drop. Even if the price drop or the price recover already, they will now say price has already increased so much, so let's wait and see again. So am I right to say forever they don't need to buy a home? So remember this Straits Times article that I'm showing it over here, right? It says that Singapore government is not adverse. If I can zoom in for you, it says Singapore government is not adverse to more property cooling measures if necessary. Okay, and here the key thing to note here is it says let the supply over here, let the supply and demand side measures work their way through. Alright, so why or what does this mean to us as consumers? So let me do a link up for you here, and you realize there is a pattern to it. If you realize before every cooling measures, there should always be an oversupply. So looking at this chart here, you'll see that in year 2013, we have 100,000 units of supply here. And you realize once the 100,000 units were cleared off, at this point of time, despite all the ABSD, TDSR, and whatever cooling measures that were introduced, the minute once the 100k unit supply cleared off over here, alright, the prices shoot back up. Right, can you see? Right, needing a new set of cooling measures in 2018. This same pattern in 2018 cooling measures apply as well. There were 70 en blocs of supply here. Alright, and resulting, because 70 en blocs will come to about 70,000 units coming into the market, and then cooling measures were being introduced, and once the 70k units were cleared off at this point, what do you observe? No matter what kind of cooling measures, the prices shot up, needing a new set of cooling measures in 2021. So, can you see how influential the oversupply factors were? So now, where was our oversupply in December 2021, 22, 23, and even 2024? As you can see here, in 2021, we have a supply of about 5,000 units, 2023, 11,000 units, and 24, 11,000 units. You might be wondering, where's 2022? Okay, so the thing is, we started selling land in year 2023 due to the manpower issue. But eventually, you will see that over here, in year 2023 or 2021 onwards, we are not looking at a 70k to even 100k unit supply at this current moment. So looking at all this, don't you agree with me that actually the oversupply was the most effective cooling measures to cool down the market? And earlier I touched on, due to our manpower issues, we could only start selling land in 2023, and we are slowly replenishing this supply. So now with that in mind, in 2018 oversupply of 70,000 units, and with aggressive cooling measures, we only have dropped about 0.7% for 2 quarters. And this is because 2018 cooling measures affected only the resale properties. Because whenever cooling measures happen, resale will be the first one to take this hit, depending on what kind of cooling measures are implemented. But otherwise, because of the higher land price being sold, the new launches will always continue to hold its price. And because the developer needs to maintain its profit margin and break-even price. So if you look at that, after the 2018 July cooling measures, many people thought the prices will actually drop, and that's why they didn't buy. And what happened after that? If you were to look at it, after the cooling measures, did the prices drop? Earlier, we were saying that the prices in 2024 went up by a 3.9%. If you look at the Straits Times article that I flashed just now, right? And if we were to plug out that number and put it in the same similar scenario in 2018, alright? Okay, so let me probably refresh my page for easier outlook. Okay, so right now, if we were to plug this figure of 3.9% in 2018, and assuming we are looking at probably say in prior to 2018, alright, we were to put this 3.9% on growth, and imagine you were at this point, okay, at this point, okay, and you are thinking whether you should go in or not. So let's say you decided to wait for the cooling measures to come in. You will be at this point. Okay, so my key question to you now is this: did you end up paying more than what you should be paying comparing to this point when you were making this decision? Now, we fast forward to 2021. Likewise, okay, you can see that the prices went up by 28.1% over here. So today, if we go by the 3.9%, similar to what was in 2024, simulating this similar scenario to the present comparison right now, okay, should you wait or should you go? So let's say you decide to wait until the December 2021 cooling measure were introduced. You were at this point. Alright, you were at this point. Did you end up paying more than what you should be paying comparing to this decision at this point after the cooling measures? Right, you realize that you end up paying more. The same thing goes for 2020 3 2024 cooling measures. And so the guy who waited now ends up paying something higher than what he was supposed to pay before. So, learning from these last two patterns, the key question to ask ourselves is this. With the news looming around in the current market, should you actually wait for the next cooling measures before you buy, or should you enter before that? Are we currently at the low point, or are we at the high point in today's market given the last recent cooling measures? So remember, do not fall into this trap anymore, alright? Coming to the present time, what about 2025, where we have a limited unsold inventory of about 19,000 and with an introduction for about 13,000 new supply in 2025. The golden question to ask ourselves again is, where do you think the prices will naturally go? It will go up, isn't it? So with that in mind, this gives us a very good indicator when the cooling measures will come in. Because we only started selling lands in 2023 first half all the way till 2025 first half. In fact, we all know lands need time to be sold. And guess what? Some of the lands in 2024 first half and second half hasn't even been sold yet. So highly likely that big oversupply will need time to come in before we really meet the measures. But from now to the oversupply, again, the key question here to ask ourselves is, how long will it take to reach there? And how much will the prices go up by then? And in fact, as the lands continue to be sold in the later period, am I right to say that they will also set new benchmark prices to support a new price? So let me give you a few examples. Take a look at the recent EC launch, Oriel EC. How much was it launched at? Right? It's an average of about 1,007 per square foot. And imagine we go all the way back then, how much were EC on an average? Probably about 800, 900. That was also considered high at the point of time, but today it kind of double of it. Now let's move closer to the central area. We look at this project called Ori at Toa Payoh. It was launched at the average of 2,700 per square foot. Even the condo all the way right at the west side Woodlands, Norwood Grand by CDL. How much was it launched at? The highest transaction already transacted at 2,252 per square foot, and take note, it's actually all the way at Woodlands. So how do we prove ourselves moving forward? The key thing is this. How are we going to help you choose an evergreen property so that be it good times or bad times, you can still sell your property with good profits? And above all this, what does this lead to? Ultimately, what we want is to lead towards this thing called the price sustainability. When the price is sustained, does it also mean that you will have a better chance of making more money? The answer is highly likely a yes. And that is what we want to catch for you, so that by entering at the right time frame and using the frameworks to select the right unit and right development, it will, in return, give you an effective exit strategy. I hope the content above that I shared managed to provide you with some clarity and directions if you are at the crossroad of making these decisions. Combining with the other 4 essential push factors, ultimately, what we want to achieve for you here is to help you build a safe and profitable entry into your property investment, be it you are buying it for your own stay or you're renting it out. And eventually, in the grand scheme of things, is to work towards your capital building process for you and your family retirement planning. In the meantime, you can check out my video over here that I talk about the 3-phase transformation and the growth story. But most importantly, our essential frameworks is generated from the latest market movement and capturing the consumer's thought process, which has enabled us to cater to each individual scenario and situation on how to balance between your requirements as well as what I feel about the market, so that we can achieve an alignment and narrow down to the right property to choose from. And of course, if you're enjoying this content, keep me motivated. Like, share and subscribe to this channel, and I will keep bringing you more insightful content, backed up by my research and most importantly, real consumer thought process from the ground. So with that, take care and I'll see you very soon.